agreement and its annexes, which was the first multilateral agreement concluded since the establishment of the WTO 20 years ago. It provides public administration and operators in WTO member states with an instrument to remedy the administrative delays and constraints that hinder the passage of goods across borders and which sensitizes stakeholders to the practice of responsible trade apart from all illegal acts such as smuggling and the corruption offenses associated with it. Entered into force on February 22, 2016, this agreement includes a set of provisions aimed to accelerate the movement, release, and clearance of goods. It responds to the demand of companies for more transparent, accessible, and predictable procedures, standardized forms, and a single point of access of all public services and bodies. Its implementation responsibility of the public authorities. However, the agreement requires that the state members establish a consultation committee, a National Trade Facilitation Committee, CNFE, whose mission is to facilitate the internal coordination and implementation of its provisions. Haiti was present in Bali and signed the agreement. The authorities of Haiti are its ratification and have invited the public and private sectors to work together to fulfill the obligations related to its implementation. For its part, the Dominican Republic completed these formalities in December 2017 and currently holds the chairmanship of the WTO committee in exchange of examining issues relating to the operation of the agreement and the achievement of its objectives. AmCham-DR provides the secretariat of this council for the Dominican Republic private sector. They agreed to be our main speaker. William Malamud will put us in the context of trade facilitation, which from their point of view has had positive effects of the benefit of practice of more competitive export prices. Bill?
Well, thank you very much, Christelle and Erica, and also to Laurent Sancier, President of AmCham Haiti, Bernard Cron, President of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Haiti, all my other friends on the AmCham Haiti board. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to share with you some of the experience we've had in advancing the trade facilitation agenda in the Dominican Republic. I think it's worth mentioning that over the past year and a half, we've had 4 meetings that have been coordinated by the U.S. State Department with Cindy Kirsch, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Western Hemisphere, Ambassador Sisson, and Ambassador Bernstein, U.S. Ambassador here in the Dominican Republic, and leaders from the private sector from both Haiti and the Dominican Republic, with the objective to identify, what the private sector can do to help formalize the cross-border trade between our 2 countries. In that context, basically we're talking about trade facilitation. And we thought it would be helpful to put that in the more global context and share some experiences. So as Christelle was saying, the goal of the conference is to share with economic agents involved in trade in Haiti on the essential elements of the Bali Accords on trade facilitation, and to share some lessons learned in the establishment of a National Trade Facilitation Committee here in the Dominican Republic. When we first started down this path 15 years ago as AmCham, there was a bit of a confusion as to what exactly trade facilitation is. And so, Perla, if you could put the next slide up. Well, first, this is what I'm going to run through. definitions, talk a little bit about how trade facilitation is directly linked to national competitiveness. The AmCham's Trade Facilitation Committee, a little bit of from Doha to how we ended up with the Bali Accords, and then dig down more deeply into the formation of a National Trade Facilitation Committee in the Dominican Republic, structure, governance, etc. So in the next slide, getting back to the basic vocabulary. When we first started talking about this, some people confused trade facilitation with trade promotion. It's not trade promotion. Promotion is marketing. Trade facilitation has to do with processes related to cross-border trade. And there are a number of different international multilateral organizations that work in trade facilitation. And each of them has their own definition of trade facilitation. I didn't put up all of their definitions because that would have probably run into about a half hour and we don't have that much time. So what we did in the DR is we went through all those definitions, and in the next slide, we came up with we thought was a more concise and workable definition. So parallel, okay. So for us, trade facilitation involves the harmonization, simplification, and standardization of the different processes and information flows associated with international trade. Now, to be even more concise, make it faster, cheaper, and simpler, or even more concise, frictionless. You want to reduce the friction, the cost, the time of moving things across the border. And in the next slide, you know, what are we trying to achieve by all of this? Well, the broad objectives of trade facilitation is to establish a regulatory and operative framework that's predictable, efficient, agile, and consistent and transparent for managing transactional processes associated with international trade, and reduce the complexity and transaction costs associated with international trade, and in so doing, enhance national competitiveness. I think this is a key point, you know, and it gets back to the, you know, we had the Doha round that was going on for years and finally ran out of gas. They were hung up on issues related to intellectual property and agricultural goods, et cetera. But one area that everybody agreed was in everyone's national interest was the trade facilitation agenda, precisely making, you know, lowering the cost and the times and the complexity of trade. So they took that out and moved forward with the Bali Accords, and that entered into effect about a little over 2 years ago. And it's important to understand how this is directly related to competitiveness. You know, the way we look at it at the AmCham, and the reason we got into it 15 years ago was that we've got a pretty privileged geographic position, so close to the largest market in the world. I mean, the United States market is bigger than the next 4 importing markets in the world. You know, there's a lot of talk about China, but still the United States imports more than the next 4 countries in the world. And we're right next door, and you're right next door to us. And you know, we're AmChams. I mean, we're working on the agenda between countries and the United States. So, you know, we saw trade facilitation as a way to not only improve trade, but also investment for the Dominican Republic. That if we can translate our geographic proximity into a real national competitive advantage, we're going to be able to pick up a lot more investment into our free zones for companies that are interested in moving their production closer to the United States to get to market quicker, to get to market cheaper. You know, in that context, you know, some recent report I read in I think it's from the World Bank. They talk about, manufactured products on an average at a global basis, 30 to 35% of the final cost of a manufactured product is logistics and transportation costs. Think about that. I mean, if you're operating in China and it's going to take you 8 weeks to move your product from China to the United States, what that means in transportation costs, what that means in logistics costs. So to the extent that we can bring down these costs and times associated with cross-border trade, we're going to have a real competitive advantage to bring in additional investment. And in addition to that, I mean, the imports coming in should be cheaper, so there's a benefit to consumers, and our exports, by definition, will be more competitive because they're lower cost bases. So that's kind of why we have been very, very focused on this. And in the next slide, Carolyn. And I'd add parenthetically that, and parenthetically, I mean, it's very important in the context of Dominican Haiti, that there's a number of products that there's a value-added step in the Dominican Republic and a value-added step in Haiti, and then on up to the United States. And the more that we can bring down the cost associated with the cross-border transport and logistics and permissions, et cetera, when it's from free zone in the Dominican Republic to a free zone in Haiti and then on to the ports, the more competitive we're going to be. And it's quality investment. These are people that are paying taxes. And so I think it's in the interest of both sides to do whatever we can to facilitate and to be able to take full advantage, not just of the geographic location, but the market, the privileged market access that, well, Dominican Republic has through DR-CAFTA and Haiti has through HOPE and health legislation, CBTPA, et cetera. So we formed a trade facilitation committee in the Dominican Republic in 2005. Our trade facilitation committee is different than our other committees in that our other committees are just member companies. Our trade facilitation committee, what we do is create a space where the key stakeholders in cross-border trade could get together, identify what we can do to bring down costs, what we can do to bring down the time, simplify processes, et cetera. So we have in our committee as ad hoc members the National Competitiveness Council, Dominican Customs, DECOX, the Trade Ministry, and special invitees depending on the situation, Ministry of Agriculture. Then we have other trade associations, the key trade associations involved in trade, the Association of Importers, Customs Brokers, the Free Zones, the Shippers Association, the Export Association, the Industry Association, et cetera. And then from within our membership, the key players involved in trade, the larger shipping agents, the ports, logistics companies, courier or express shipment companies. So we got a big table, and that committee has been in action over 15 years. It's had an evolving agenda, but the overall objective is to be bringing down costs, times, complexity of cross-border trade. In the next slide, the vision of our committee is position the DR as a regional leader in trade facilitation. And the mission, how we're going to do it, is improving the ranking of the logistics performance indicator for cross-border trade by reducing time and costs associated with cross-border trade and within a framework of public and private dialogue. We look at very specific indicators to be measuring the impact of what we're doing. There's the logistics performance indicator by the World Bank, and then there's the World Bank, or help me out there, Perla. In any event, logistics performance indicator, and then there's the doing business, which has 10 broad indicators it's measuring. One specifically related to cross-border trade, which has a number of sub-indicators on relating to cost and time, complexity of cross-border trade. So we measure the impact of what we're doing. We identify, where are the areas that we're behind the curve, and focus in on those to see what we can be doing. And so we know that it's evolving over time, but that's the methodology. Our current general objectives within the AmCham Trade Facilitation Committee is, one, to be positioning the country as a hub. Again, that's geographic proximity, our what we consider to be world-class ports, and increase the number of containers that are going through the 6 centers. We also have a focus on cargo safety. This has more to do with ground transportation issues. And we want to be assuring the continuity and effectiveness of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. And we'll get into that in more detail, but that's been up and running for a little over 2 years, and it's been very effective. We've just had a change in government, came in August. As I know that you're aware with the realities of when there's a change in government, you can have a pretty significant turnover in personnel. And how do you maintain the institutional memory and continuity on things that seem to be working? And our National Trade Facilitation is working, and we want to be sure that it continues to do so. So in the next slide, basically, the World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement, structure, categories, and mechanisms, National Trade Facilitation Committee, and lessons learned. That's going to be parallel, but the last thing I think I'd leave to you before we flip it to Perla, who's the coordinator of the committee, is to, I thought there were some missing slides there, Perla. Wasn't there the slide on the composition of our committee? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's our committee, but the national committee?
Yeah, I can put that to you. Hold on.
While she's getting that slide up, the national committee is one of the commitments under the Bali Accords, that a country will set up a National Trade Facilitation Committee to oversee, monitor the and compliance with the commitments under the agreement. It says you should set one up, but it doesn't say how to do it, what it should look like, what its structures are, etc. And when first draft of the decree that came out of the Dominican government, it was all public sector. There was no private sector participation in the National Trade Facilitation draft decree. And when we saw that, we invited the Director of Customs and other ministers involved to a meeting with our Trade Facilitation Committee, and said, hey, we've looked at other countries where things seem to be working well, and this is what we found, that it's important to have the key stakeholders in trade involved in this process, because it's not all public sector. I mean, the private sector we're the ones that are engaging in trade. you know, the ports, the customs brokers, the shipping agents, et cetera. You know, so you need to have key stakeholders around the same table in order to be carrying all this out. And we were able to get that decree modified, where now we have 9 public sector and 9 private sector associations. And Perla will go into more detail and structure, but I just want to emphasize the importance of getting it set up with private sector involvement, that this can't be just a government, another government commission, which is just putting together decrees or regulations and imposing them on the private sector. It needs to be a more collaborative in which you're identifying areas of improvement and how we're going to be carrying out the commitments under the agreement and coming up with common solutions. And so with that, I'll flip it over to Perla de la Rosa. She heads up the project management office at the AmCham, and she's the coordinator of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. AmCham was elected as the secretariat of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. And in that role, she'll explain what her role is, but she's been playing a very key role in all of these processes and has a lot to share with you. So, Perla?
Thank you, Mr. Malamud, and good morning, everybody. So basically, I'm going to take off from what Mr. Malamud has already presented. We're going to be seeing and down a little bit more into the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. We're going to see some structure, some categories, some mechanisms. After we do that, we're going to go right to the Dominican Republic National Trade Facilitation Committee. And I brought you up some slides where you guys can see how it's structured and how is the plan executed by now. And lastly, but not least, we're going to see some lessons learned. So let's get to it right away. So as Mr. Malamud said, and I'm going to start by going back with the structure, we have some working definitions, and these working definitions are definitely what the agreement is for. So we're going to have transparency. And by transparency in the agreement, what is meant is that we need to ensure that the information, requirements, and process for crossing borders are clear and specific and easily accessible for all the actors that are involved in the supply chain. We have a second principle that is harmonization. And by this, what the agreement is meant for is the harmonization of applicable laws and regulation. And this is part of what Mr. Malamud said before. It's very important that the government and the sector are aligned, because by its principle, we need that harmonization between both sectors. The third principle that we're going to be seeing is standardization, and by that, the agreement, it's taking a leap on the standardization of information, the information and the requirements of the use of technology also for the of information efficiently. So I don't know if you guys have heard about the single window. The single window is actually one of the initiatives that the articles from the agreement establish. So as I told you guys before, these principles are going to be driven through principles throughout the whole articles and the whole agreement. And by standardization, we're saying let's have information that is standardized throughout not only the public sector, but also to the private sector. And the last one, but not least, we're talking about simplification. So when we're talking about simplification in the agreement, it's basically a simplification of the administrative and the commercial formalities, procedures, and documents. So standardization, simplification, harmonization, and transparency are going to be your 4 pillars throughout the whole agreement. So let's keep this 4 pillars and let's dive into the articles. So the structure of the agreement, it's easy. It's not as hard as it looks. So you are going to have 12 articles. These 12 articles are going to have 32 measurements. These measurements, then you can maybe convert them into project, program, or whatever you need to comply with the agreement. So you're going to have these 12 articles, and I'm going to read just some of them. For example, we have the article number 1, which is the publication and availability of information. And this one is very important. And so many of these articles, you just don't only comply with them. It's something that you need to have, it needs to be updated throughout the years. So for this first article, what we're saying, publication of the information relating to trade rules and procedures needs to be available for everybody. So governments have to agree to publish a wide range of customs-specific information included into the internet, and that's something that we all have seen throughout this last COVID session, right? Related to trade procedures, including on duty rates and taxes, forms and documents, rules for goods classification and valuation, rules of origin, transit procedures, and penalties and appeal rules. So by the first article, we're already seeing a little bit of transparency and a little bit of simplification. So what we're saying here is we have to have a site where all this information go through. Another really important article, and I can dive into this one. It's, oh, sorry, I switch it. It's the second one, and this is very important for the private sector because it gives everybody on the chain the opportunity to comment information before entry into force and consultation. So what we're saying here is that prior consultation and amendments to trade rules and procedures, the government have to agree to consult traders, interested parties before introducing new amendments, laws related to the movement, release, and clearance of goods. So I'm just gonna read these 2 basic articles, but I'm gonna send you guys all the information of all the other ones. These 2 are one of the most important. And if you see the second one that I already talked about, it's so important to have a place and a table where the public and the private sector can sit and discuss these matters. So by applying this agreement, the private and the public sector have the chance to have a more aligned communication. So drilling down a little bit more into the structure, the first section you saw, it was all the articles. So you're gonna see all the articles, and all of those articles are gonna have measurements, but section 2 and section 3 are really important. So section 2 will tell you that you have to form and maintain a National Trade Facilitation Committee, right? And that's what we did. So in order for you to comply with this agreement, you have to form the National Trade Facilitation Committee. So what it says is that most governments are consulting with both public stakeholders and business communities. And that's what we did here in the Dominican Republic. We set up the National Trade Facilitation Committee, as Mr. Malamud said prior to my presentation, with 9 private sector, 9 ministries and institutions of the public sector. And lastly, but not least, the third section will be a help for us who are developing countries. So what the agreement says is, and this is basically part of what the agreement is for, that if you need special assistance, you can ask for that. And I think it can help me out with this one. There is an alliance for the trade facilitation implementation where they give funds and technical assistance on the projects that the most or least developed countries and economies needs. So this is an agreement that everybody can ratify, and that's the idea. The idea is that all the countries can enter into this agreement and start developing trade facilitation to be more competitive.
Did you want me to say something on that, or?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, there's the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, which is basically was set up to provide technical assistance to countries that need technical assistance. I think, Pearl, you're going to get into the different baskets, AC.
Yeah.
But for there's certain measures or measures within the articles that you have to do a self-diagnosis. Where are the areas that you already comply? What are the areas that you will comply? And you think you feel confident that you'll be able to do it? And then what are the areas there? Well, you're not in compliance and you don't know how to get there. You need technical assistance. The Global Alliance for Transportation was set up to provide technical assistance to countries in meeting those requirements. So that's something with funds from IBD, from AID, from Germany, from UK, and they're based out of Washington. If there's specific projects that you want to get going, I mean, we can, in a conversation later, we can share more information on how all that process works, but that there are funds available there. We had applied jointly with Dominican Customs to get technical assistance for the implementation of the single window. So we're familiar with that process.
Yes, that's right. So just taking down on what Mr. Malamud said about the categories for A, B, and C. So you're going to have a lot of measurements, right? You're going to have 32 measurements, and you're going to have different initiatives where you have to say whether you comply or you do not. So this is very simple, and I'm going to take it from A, B, and C. So the initiatives or the articles that you're going to say you're in category A are the ones that you have. Okay, so these may be things that you already have established throughout your logistics chain, and you already have that done. That's basically what A means. So B are going to be all the projects and all the initiatives that you need time to develop. Maybe you already started, but you haven't finished, so you haven't complied completely. So those B categories will be developed in a certain time, right? So you're going to put that down into a plan. You're going to see that later because I'm going to explain you how we did it. And numbers on the letter C. So this category is one of the most important ones. So when you say you have an initiative that is category C or an arts category C, it means that you guys need technical assistance and you need monetary funds. So there are some of the initiatives that probably you're going to need the technical assistance, and probably you're going to need the money to develop it, right? So one of this, and I want to take an example of a category C. It's the single window. For example, the single window, it's the platform where all the information is connected, and all of the ministries and the public institutions can upload the forms, and you can have the permits throughout the single window. But if you see that, it's a very highly complex implementation from the technology area. So if you don't have the technical capacities, then you can put this category C, and then as soon as you upload it to the WTO, there are so many organizations that can help you guys with that, as Mr. Malamud said, with the, for example, Trade Facilitation Alliance. So that's basically the reason how you say you are into any initiatives and articles from the agreement. And just to give you an example, and I wanted to show you guys this. So we talked about the articles, right? So we talked about the categories and how do you say you're A, B, or C, but what are the measures? What do you guys need to do? And I brought up some examples of the measurements. So first, and I'm gonna drill down into all of those, you have, for example, examples of reforms that will increase efficiently transparency and predictable. And this could be reduction and simplification and standardization of data. And this can be an automation of documents, procedures, processes, and all that. A second one can be creation of the environment for a systematic dialogue. And this is the creation basically of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. Third, you can have a coordination and cooperation between customs and other control agencies. So this is very, very important. And see that there is something about the single window here. That's one of the measurements that I already talked about. The creation of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. It's very important for you guys to create this in order really for this implementation to really go through. The use of aligned documents. There are a lot of documents throughout the trade facilitation agreement. There is pages that you can look for. The OUN has so many documents that are already standardized, and this will help you to have the same documents as other countries. So I'll just put some links and send it to Ms. Erica so that you guys can have that too. Establishing trade inquiry points where the information is available. This is very important and is crucial. And this one that I already highlighted to you guys is adjusting opening hours of border crossing to commercial needs and flexibility to work outside usual business hours. So this measure precisely, what we did is that we extended the customs hours for the special, I forgot the word, sorry, despacho, Mr. Malowin.
Or clear customs.
Yeah,
Clear.
so that's right. So what we did is that we amplify those hours for the clearance, and that has helped us so much. We have so many benefits. We had lowered so many costs of clearance and containers that stayed overnight, that they are not staying overnight now, and so many other benefits. It's a really good measurement, and it's a good one to start with. The aid is
not just in the transportation costs, but I mean you've got a lot of businesses want to be stocking their warehouses at night, so they're ready to send it out during the day. So a lot of knock-on.
And also for perishables. I mean, you have a cargo with perishables, and then you want to take that out as soon as possible. So you can do that in late hours. I think here it's until 10 p.m. So that's a really good measurement to start with. The other one is publicizing laws. And by this, it's very simple. It's just, let's not get into so many words in the laws. Let's do something more simplified so that everybody can understand, and that we can do this throughout the time frame of the agreement. And this is because we will need maybe a lot of laws and procedures to be either amended or created as new one. And last one, and this is one of the most important, information and communication technologies are important tools for promoting the trade facilitation. So what we're saying here in this measurement is, let's put all the information that all of the actors of the chain needs up in a site. And that's basically the example of measurements that I wanted to bring you guys up with. And I'm gonna stay with with the number 4, the creation of the National Trade Facilitation Bodies. And I'm gonna drill down, and this is something that Mr. Malamed showed you before, So I put it into step, like what do you guys need or what have we done to create the National Trade Facilitation Committee and to respond to this agreement. So step one, you have to establish who the members are. It's really important that you create this table and establish who are these members. But not only who are the members, you have to define who is the presidency, who is the secretariat. In our case, the presidency is customs. We are the secretariats. But more important, there needs to be an execution team. So you're gonna have a logistics management team. In our case, we put customs and Consejo Nacional de Competitividad, but you can choose whoever you think it's capable of handling the execution. And the other very important part of establishing the members is that for you to implement measurements, you're going to be needing task forces. So what we did here, we created 8 task forces, and these task forces are developing and implementing all of the initiatives that are within the measurements. So for example, we have one right now that is for risk management, and that's part of the agreement. So we created that task force. We select for that task force, that is Industria y Comercio, Commerce and Industry, and then that table is set up with people from the different institutions, public institutions like defense, like agriculture, like customs itself, and so many others. So by creating this task force for each measurement or for each initiative will allow you to create a better looking plan and a more executable plan. So next step is establishing a strategic plan. So, okay, so you're gonna look at this agreement and the implementation of this agreement basically as if you were creating a business. So if you create a business, you're gonna start saying, right, who's gonna work with me, right? So you're gonna have a mission and you're gonna have a vision. And maybe you have objectives, but in this case, we will have a strategic objectives. And this is strategic plan. It's going to be the plan that you're going to establish for the next 3 years. So after those 3 years are done, you're gonna establish a plan with everything that you've already done and what's coming up next. Because this is a really important part of this article and the National Trade Facilitation Committee, is that it's not only for you guys to comply with an agreement. This is something that it's going to stay there. In our mission, we basically are saying that we want to promote the initiatives of the trade facilitation and logistics, that we want to be the leaders of the application of the trade facilitation. And by the vision, we're saying that we want to be the promoters of the coordination and of the initiatives of the trade facilitation, right? So I don't read everything up, but I'm gonna send you guys this also. There are so many initiatives, and if you can see by one, you're gonna see that they are very much aligned to what I show you first, that are the 4 principles of the agreement. After you establish a strategic plan, what are you going to need? You're gonna need a project portfolio. So what we did, and this has helped us a lot, we said, okay, we have already said what are the categories, A, B, and C. We say what are the measurements that we have to work on and what are the ones that need technical assistance. So we created a portfolio, and this portfolio, you will see the initiatives of the strategic plan. You're gonna see the whole portfolio of the different projects. And what we did here, it's basically that we said that, you know what, the ones that are category A, that we already comply, it's not only that we comply, we need to have continuous improvement. So we're gonna leave it in the portfolio. So we have those articles here. Then we have, and this is basically a program, and these are other projects, right? So we have another program that is called RUSE, and this is a single window. And we define it to be a program because, as you might know, developing and creating a software or an implementation of a digital platform, it's going to need a lot of process analyzation. And with the single window, you have different parties involved. So we wanted to part this as a program where we can have different projects, and we can start with analyzing the processes, for example, in customs, in agriculture, in the healthcare institutions, and so on. And then we want to develop the platform, and that's why we kind of partition that into a program, into different projects. And lastly, this is the one that we're working this year and next year, is the risk management. So also we put this into 3 projects, and we wanted to see step by step what this risk management initiatives was going to take us. The step 3.1, let's call it like that, would be you need to establish a roadmap. And this is another thing that is so important.
Just one quick, for people that aren't familiar, the deep, when we say 1.2, that's Article 1, the second measure or commitment within the agreement. So the first number is the article, the second is the measure within that article.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Malamud. Yeah, so that's right. We said Article 1, Measurement 2, Article 1, Measurement 4, and so on. So, and also you can see it here. So we established a roadmap. So you already have your strategic plan. You have your members, you know, who are the people who are going to work with you guys. So you know the measurements, you already categorize those measurements. So now what you're going to do is that you're going to prioritize on which one do you want to work first. So this is our prioritizations of the measurements. And we set it up from 2018 till 2021. And this is a very good picture of how we can measure the advance of the agreement itself. So that's step 3. And step 4, it's be aware of the trade chain. And this is, I wanted to put it as a step 4, but it's also a lesson learned. And this is because as soon as you create the National Trade Facilitation Committee, you're gonna have many actors involved. So you're gonna have the whole chain. You're gonna have the buy, where you have to the order prepare or preparation, have shipping, and then you can have the transport and border crossing, and then you have the payment. But if you can see here, one new actor that has a very important role throughout the year with this whole mess of the COVID-19 is technology. And we didn't saw that coming, but it's one of the actors that it's more involved now than ever within the execution of the agreement. So the step 4 will be quite aware of the trade chain, be quite aware of where it's moving and who are the new actors of the trade chain. So by that, I finish up, Mr. Malamud, and we can go right to the lessons learned. If you have anything to share with us also.
Okay, thank you, Perla. And now we're going to pass the mic to Mr. Bernard Kran.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank AmCham DR and AmCham Haiti for the organization of this webinar. Haiti has certainly not gone through all the steps toward the implementation of the TFA. And I would like to thank William and Perla for this sharing of experience and expertise that has allowed us to better understand the scope of this legal instrument and also the best way to use it in our advocacy for better international trade conditions. The Asian private sector associations and chambers have been aware of this issue since 2013-2014, when the Ministry of Commerce and Industry added us to the preparations of its participation into the Bali conference. This was the occasion before the conference to review the issue, to draw up an inventory of the needs of Haiti. We, also after the signing, had to work on the implementation plan of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. This work was possible thanks to the technical support of the UN Conference Trade and Development. At the same time, our representatives took part in the design of the diagnostic study on trade, which was a roadmap for the development of trade focused on the organization of strong value-added production sector, as well as capacity building. This was used as a framework for the implementation of the funded trade assistance project, of which one of the results in the trade is the Trade Information Portal, managed by a joint committee established by the Presidential Decree of February 3rd, 2016. The private sector is present, and the Asian Chamber of Commerce and the Manufacturers Association, ADI, are our representatives. We had also participated in the workshop of materialization of the 36 commitments included into the agreement, and continue to contribute to the periodic revisions that the Ministry of Commerce and Industry organizes through the TradeCom project. In the Business Socioeconomic Agenda released in 2017 by the Private Sector Economic Forum, we encourage the establishment of national roadmap for the implementation of the TFA and supported the creation of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, which should be the formal institutional forum for dialogue and consultation between public and private actors on all issues concerning international trade. In the following year, we have had the opportunity to participate in the work coordinated by the Ministry of Commerce and Industries on the establishment of the National Trade Facilitation Committee for Haiti and the regional seminar on the implementation of this agreement, strategic and effective implementation in CARICOM. We have recently resumed technical exchange within the private sector and provided our comments on the submitted by the Directorate of Foreign Trade of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, who is receiving technical support from a project of the European Union. As we told them, this structure must remain independent and consultative. It is up to public institutions, particularly the General Administration of Customs, to implement the terms of the agreement as soon as it is being ratified. That the committee must first be a forum for the proposal of concerted actions by the stakeholders aiming to materialize the principles defended by this agreement, while aligning them with the specificities of our country. We are therefore within the private sector for a simple, efficient structure, not as complex as the one proposed by the consultant to the ministry. The principle of transparency in good governance is to make information available to the public so that it can be accessible and used in a timely manner. History has shown us that the participation of stakeholders in the research for solutions is a key factor in the success of the application of public policy measures. Also, whether it is a law, a regulation, or an administrative decision, their opinion in the operation and development process before the texts submitted are set into law or regulation. The principles of simplification, harmonization, and standardizations are echoed through operators' plea for standardized export and import procedures, resulting from continuance improvement processes involving all borders regulatory agencies. If we help more Haitian businesses, especially SMEs, to participate in international trade, it is mandatory to address the unnecessary costs of procedures and complex administrative formalities. The first victims are, among others, perishable food producing companies and high-tech manufacturers, both being very sensitive to delays. Despite the accumulated delays, we have not remained inactive in this area. We first collaborated in 2017 with the General Administration of Customs to promote the signing of an information exchange agreement with the Dominican Customs, whose purpose is to have in real time data on the movement of goods at the Haitian-Dominican border. The implementation of this tool will allow both countries to collect tax revenue that were not collected by the administration of both countries. The private sector of both countries have been working together to advocate with their government and raise awareness of the benefits of implementing the measures included in this agreement. We are beginning to reap the fruits of our labor because we have seen progress since the end of the summer. If we look at the terms of it is perfectly aligned with the TFE article number 12 dealing with cooperation between the two customs. Political instability and more recently COVID-19 have almost paralyzed the processing of the trade facilitation file. It was listed among the priorities during a meeting held on March 10, 2020 between the Minister of Commerce and Industry and representatives of the private sector. The latest information recently collected from the ministry indicates exchanges between the Director of Foreign Trade and the Minister's office in order to finalize the draft of the ratification order for the agreement to be submitted to the Council of Ministers for approval. We do trade facilitation every day whenever our members need us to intervene and address national trade issue. However, we need to institutionalize the processes in order to make them permanent and thus offer the public and private sectors this platform of dialogue and consultation that will be dedicated to the collaboration between the two sectors to achieve better performance. It will also be a satisfaction for companies that want more transparent, accessible, and predictable procedures, standardized forms, and a single point of access for all import and export services. As you can see, we are far from what the Dominican Republic has accomplished. I would like to thank Bill and Perla for the valuable information you shared with us that will help us avoid pitfalls along the way. Rest assured that our collaboration will keep on growing over time and that we will meet again once the agreement ratified to identify the actions to be promoted in order to have commercial relations that are profitable for our two countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Now we're ready for the questions. No. Does anyone have questions concerning the theme of the presentations, the different presentations?
If there is no questions, I would like to stress the issue of the ratification of the Trade Facilitation Agreement in Haiti. We are living in a situation right now in Haiti in which a new regulation has been put and implemented since October 1st regarding the imports of goods in Haiti. I'm talking about the SGS issue. SGS being a Swiss institution that is verifying the value of merchandises that are coming into Haiti. This regulation was not publicized. It came to us informally. It is a regulation that was set September 18th, and they gave us only 6 open days to learn about that regulation and for it to be implemented. It is a regulation in which all providers of goods to Haiti will have to contact SGS before exporting their goods to Haiti and ask for a certificate of conformity. While we understand perfectly the need to control the goods that are coming into our country, not only to be sure of the value, of the real value of those goods, but also of the quality of the goods that are exported to our country. We feel that if that trade facilitation agreement was in place, if the committee was also in place, we would have had the time first to discuss the regulation with the Haitian authorities, to express to them our preoccupation of the fact that this new regulation would apparently will be not only charged with the custom invoice, because we are paying now 6% of the value of the goods as a fee of verification on the custom invoice. But apparently, not apparently, but this new regulation, the cost of the certificate of conformity will be charged also to the exporter. Then there is a double charge for verification. Not only that, it's a very complicated process. And our providers are saying that they need time in order to understand, to build the capacity within their enterprise, and to abide by the new regulation. They are asking for some time. This is exactly the kind of issues that this trade facility agreement would solve by creation of the committee and by the discussions prior to the establishment of new regulations.
Thank you, Bernard. There's no other questions, or would someone like to add something? Then I think that's it. I thank you all for joining our webinar today. William, I know you need to add something.
Yeah, well, basically, I'd just like to thank you, Erica, Christelle, Laurent, Bernard, for share with you all. I hope you now have a clearer understanding of what trade facilitation is all about, the Bali Accords, and the role of a national committee on trade facilitation. And I want to emphasize that this is not a cookie cutter thing. Just because the way we've done it here is not necessarily the way you need to do it over there. We have 9 public sector, 9 private sector. Maybe it's better that it's 6 and 6 or 12 and 12. The important thing is that both sides are at the table working together. And also, the appreciation on the importance of trade facilitation for national competitiveness, and to allow you to more easily integrate into global supply chains. That this isn't about compliance to some outside agreement. This is about, national competitiveness. This is not something you're doing to satisfy outside parties. This is something you're doing to strengthen your own private sector. and their ability to compete in the global marketplace. And we can also work together, AmCham to AmCham, but also through the this private sector dialogue that the State Department has been facilitating in addressing some of the issues on our common border. I know it's a more sensitive subject at different levels, but I think that there's some real opportunities for both sides that we're going to be stronger together if we can be having more formal processes at the border. That's going to allow or incentivize more investment in co-production activity. Again, it's north towards the United States market. And with that, just thanks again, and look forward to continuing dialogue with Bernard and the rest of the other private sector organizations in Haiti through the initiative the Deputy Assistant Secretary Kirst had initiated, and of course with Erica and all our friends at the AmCham. I guess just next week we have the FOLAC meeting going on virtually in Washington. We'll be interacting with you more there. So on the behalf of our AmCham board of directors and membership, I want to thank you for the opportunity to connect and engage with you all, and I hope that we can identify some
Bill?
and share information. Sure, Erica.
Martin wanted to ask a question.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Perla. Hi, Bernard.
Hi.
Hi. I would like to ask Bill and Perla, what should be the three principal issues that we can explore between the private sector of Haiti and the private sector of the Dominican Republic to facilitate trade between Haiti and the Dominican Republic?
That's a good one. Mr. Malabar?
That's a hard one.
That's precisely what the this working group has been established to try to identify, and we've been it's the agenda of that is a little bit broader, but it's I think it's very focused on issues relating to the border. There's different aspects to it. I mean, there's the public markets, which is one thing, and then there's some of the issues relating to the co-production along the border. What can be done to facilitate that? From our perspective, I think that our being the AmCham, and we're not speaking in the name of the broader private sector in the Dominican Republic, but we think there's a tremendous opportunity for more co-production, and so focusing in on some of the issues related to that. But it's a target-rich environment, shall we say, on both sides in terms of things that can be done to improve. And it's going to take, I think, an important thing is having a space where we're talking and able to identify priorities. And all important is I know Bernard is very aware. I mean, private sector can only go so far. I mean, we need the governments to engage and formalize these things. I mean, we can identify areas for improvement, but at the end of the day, the governments on both sides also need to be engaged and identify common ground. I know Dominican Customs under the new administration, I mean, specifically with them about some of these border issues. They recognize Haiti as second largest market for Dominican exports. I know that's a sensitive subject for some people on your side, that there's too much and some of which is not, some or much of which is not paying duties, and that undercuts some of the formal business in the Haitian side, and also is missed revenue for the government. We're all for formal trade, and that should not be in direct competition with local formal industry in the Dominican Republic. there's a lot of issues there, and I think we've got a meeting coming up. They're in the process of coordinating for the next meeting of that
Yeah.
binational. So we'll have that dialogue.
Yeah, that's right. So basically what Mr. Malamuth said, there are a lot of, I will not call them issues, but a lot of opportunities for both countries, both of our countries, to sit down in a dialogue. There is actually a new task force that is getting together now. We're going to have a meeting on Monday, and it's basically to treat those opportunities. And force is aligned to one of the articles of the agreement, that is border cooperation. So we'll be very glad if you can join us maybe in one of those meetings where we can have the private sector and public sector sit down, and we can, as Mr. Malamuth said, point out what are the priorities, opportunities that we should attack throughout these last 3 months of the year, and maybe prepare some plan where we can deliver more solutions to those issues.
Thank you very much.
And one other thing to add, Bernard had alluded to it in his remarks, but the information exchange agreement between the two customs authorities, that's some pretty low-hanging fruit. And I think it'd be an important step, and it shouldn't be too hard to implement. But again, that's outside of the hands of the private sector that need the public sector to step forward. In our discussions with the new customs director on the Dominican Republic side, I mean, this was like, I think his first week on the job, but he was aware of it. He said he wanted to move forward on it, and looking forward to engaging with his counterpart on the Dominican side. But he's still figuring out, his first couple of weeks on the job, where his office is, where his park is, that kind of stuff. So we'll see how things go.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. Thank you to all our speakers and all of you that participate in the webinar, and we shall see you soon.
Thank you. Before we part away, there is a question from someone in Haiti that asking what steps can we take to facilitate export from Haiti to the DR. This is a question that a lot of Asian enterprises have been asking. I know that some organizations have tried to facilitate Asian exports. I'm talking about Caribbean export to be very precise. I've tried to facilitate exports from Haiti during the past 4 years. I know that also some trade fairs were organized between those exporters, possible importers from the DR. Meetings were organized, but until today, there are some issues apparently that have not make those possibilities, opportunities, like Perla was saying, to be concrete. I know that there are some Haitian enterprises that are looking also at the Dominican market and that are interested to export of their goods to the DR. This is something that we will be working on within both private sector first and within the both private sector and our governments. I would like also to thank again Bill and Perla. Muchas gracias. Hemos tenido una conferencia muy interesante. It has been a very interesting conference. I've learned a lot from you, and I can tell you that we will not reinvent the wheel here in Haiti. Even though Bill is saying that there is no need to copy, we will not be copying. We will be inspiring from your, because the experience is there, the expertise is there, and there is no need to go elsewhere. What you have done is exactly what we should implement in Haiti. and that will avoid the pitfalls that I was talking about. Thank you very much. And thank you to AmCham Haiti for the organization of that webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Merci beaucoup.
De nada. Eso.
Oui, oui, je parle. On peut.
À bientôt. À bientôt.
Bientôt.